Hello, welcome to the Long Island Museum and our Winter Family Fun event. I'm here in our Carriage building to explore some of our favorite ways to travel in the wintertime. There's a lot of snow on the ground outside, and it's the perfect time to think about traveling in snowy weather. I'm here in our Carriage Museum where we focus on transportation. What do we mean when we say transportation? Have you ever thought about that word before? Usually we mean the way that people get from one place to another. Does it get a little harder to travel in the wintertime when there's snow and ice on the ground? Absolutely it does. Wheels slip in the snow, so in modern times it makes it a little bit harder to travel in a car or a truck or a bus. In the 1800s and 1900s, it made it harder to travel in a carriage with wheels. So people had to think of other ways to get around in the snowy winter weather. Here I am in front of an example of winter travel. I'm going to ask you to take a look and make some observations about the vehicle behind me. I want you to go ahead and notice the color of the vehicle, the shape of the vehicle. Notice how many seats are on the vehicle. How many people would ride in this vehicle? Look at the bottom of the vehicle. Are there wheels on the bottom? You might have noticed that there are not wheels. There are these long runners, which are meant to travel through snow and ice, just like skis or ice skates. You might notice that there are some steps to climb up into this vehicle. Has anyone guessed yet what the name of this vehicle is? It's a sleigh. And this sleigh in particular is called the vis-a-vis sleigh. It's called the vis-a-vis sleigh because in French that means face to face. You might have noticed that there's a seat for the driver in the front of the sleigh, right here. He would be sitting and holding the horses by their reins and steering them, and he would be driving passengers in the back of the sleigh, who would be facing one another. There are two seats that face one another where people could sit and have a ride and have a conversation and enjoy the winter landscape. You might also notice the color of this sleigh. It's a beautiful, rich red with bright red accents. It's a very pretty vehicle. Do you think this was the kind of vehicle that you took out every day on your way to work or school? Probably not, right? This is what we call a pleasure vehicle. It was a sleigh for taking rides and enjoying yourself on a nice outing. It wasn't necessarily the kind of sleigh that you took back and forth with you every day. The really interesting thing about sleighs is that they were less expensive to own and to purchase than carriages or wagons. So more families owned sleighs than those other vehicles. So a sleigh ride was a great way for many families, especially in a rural area like Long Island, to spend some time together and get out and enjoy the landscape. Welcome to a new gallery in the Carriage Museum. This gallery is our exposition gallery, and it's a place where we have some of our more fancy vehicles on display. I'm standing next to a new sleigh that we're going to explore and discover together. I want you to go ahead and observe this sleigh and notice some of the differences and similarities to the vis-a-vis sleigh. This sleigh is from the year 1880, which is just about the same time period as the vis-a-vis sleigh, but there are many differences. Go ahead and observe the color of this sleigh, the shape of this sleigh. Notice the runners on the bottom of this sleigh, and start to look at some of the details about this sleigh. What do you notice that's different than the vis-a-vis? One of the big things that we notice is the door on the side. This is not an open sleigh like the vis-a-vis, which had no top. This sleigh has doors and sides and a top. And you might notice my reflection in the window. This sleigh has windows, which is very exciting for the time period. Not many vehicles had glass windows. What do some of these details tell you about this sleigh? If you guessed that this sleigh was owned and ridden in by someone who had a lot of money, you are correct. This type of sleigh was very popular in New England and Boston in the time period, and these sleighs were mostly owned by people who had the money to pay a staff to take care of the sleigh and even to drive the sleigh. There would have been a driver who sat on the front of the sleigh, who would have been outfitted in full livery, including something like this top hat, and the owner would ride inside the sleigh. Inside the sleigh, once you open the door, which has this beautifully carved handle, the inside seat is covered in plush velvet, the ceiling and the walls are covered in satin, and there's even a tiny satin ball on the inside that the rider could pull to make a noise and signal to the driver when the owner or rider needed to get the driver's attention. What do you think about the windows? Do you think it would be nice to look outside and see the snowy world but not be so cold? We also think that it would have been nice for the owners of this sleigh to allow people to see inside at them. Who were they? Where were they going in this fancy sleigh? I think that the windows were as much about being seen as being able to see. Another important detail of this sleigh is the way it is connected to the bottom. The name of this sleigh is the booby hut, which sounds like a funny name. And booby is an English word for the body of a carriage, and it was actually attached to the bottom on these leather straps, leather and wood on the bottom, that really allowed the sleigh to have a soft, comfortable ride on snowy, icy roads. So not only were you warm and comfortable and not doing your own driving, but you also had a very smooth ride. One more thing to think about when we look at the booby hut sleigh is located right here. I want you to take a look at this item and think about what it might be and what purpose it might serve. Does anyone know what this is? If you guessed that it's a lantern, you're correct. This sleigh has lanterns on the front. Do you think that when these lanterns were lit, they lit the way in front of the sleigh, the way modern car lights light the way on the road? Probably not, right? What kind of light lit the inside of this lantern? And I have one here to show you what it might have looked like. So a lantern in the late 19th century may have gotten about that bright. Does that seem bright enough to light the road up? Certainly not, right? Most lanterns would have been lit inside by a candle or with a wick and some oil. And the reason for the light was actually so that people could see the sleigh coming. Not so much about the sleigh driver seeing the road in front of them. So if you were crossing the street on a dark, snowy night and you saw a tiny little light slowly getting closer, you would know to get out of the way. Chances are there was a sleigh coming. Here we are at the last sleigh that we will explore in today's program. I want you to go ahead and make some observations about this sleigh. I want you to notice the size of it. Take a look at the shape of this sleigh. Imagine how many people would fit inside this sleigh. Notice the colors of this sleigh. Look at the beautiful painting and embellishment, the different things that are painted and drawn onto the sleigh. Start to think about what it would be like to ride in this sleigh. Would it feel different than the vis-a-vis sleigh? How would the ride in this sleigh be different than a ride in the booby hut sleigh? Do you think that this sleigh is newer or older than the other two sleighs we've discussed? This sleigh is a lot older than either of those sleighs. It is from about the year 1830. It's a straight panel Portland style sleigh, which is a very simple open sleigh. It's not quite as fancy or as elaborate as the other two sleighs we've discovered today, but something about it does make it very fancy. You probably noticed the beautiful painting on this sleigh. There is embellishment and painting and detail all over the sleigh with different colors. This sleigh was owned by an upholsterer later in its life, about 50 years after it was built. An upholsterer, or carriage trimmer, was someone who designed and covered the inside of vehicles with cushions and things to make them comfortable and beautiful. So this sleigh functioned as an advertisement for his business, and he had it painted beautifully so that people would see him riding in his sleigh and say, wow, that's beautiful, fine craftsmanship and work. There's also something exciting about this sleigh to think about. We haven't gotten to this yet in our discussion, but how did these sleighs move? Did someone get inside the sleighs and turn a key and fill them with gas? No. Do you think people pulled the sleighs? Do you think that you would only put the sleigh at the top of a hill and ride down? No. These sleighs, every single sleigh we've looked at today, was a horse-drawn sleigh. That means that horses were attached to the sleigh in some fashion, and the driver would hold the reins, and horses would steer and pull the sleigh. So let's think about that for a minute. Can you think of any song that you know that's about having a sleigh ride? A song that we sing in the winter and around the holiday time? If you guessed Jingle Bells, you're correct. Jingle Bells is a song about having a sleigh ride. And the song is actually about this type of sleigh. If you think of the lyrics of the song, after you sing the Jingle Bells part, you get to the part about riding in a one-horse open sleigh. And that's exactly what this is. This is an open sleigh because there's no top and no side like the booby hut. And it's a one-horse sleigh because it's small and light enough for a single horse to pull it. Now, what about the Jingle Bells part? Why do you think you would sing a song about a sleigh ride where the main chorus is Jingle Bells? I'm going to give you a clue. I want you to close your eyes and pretend you're on a dirt road at night in the dark and the snow, having a beautiful moonlit walk, and you hear something like this. What would that tell you? Just like seeing the light from the lantern on the booby hut, jingle bells were put onto horses to let people or pedestrians in the street or on a trail know that there was a sleigh approaching. In the wintertime, it's dark for much of the day, so often sleigh rides would be at night or in the twilight or in the snow when you couldn't see a sleigh coming, but you could hear it. So I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their winter and you enjoy some wonderful time outside in the snowy weather.
Hello everybody, I'm Emma and we have now walked down the path from our carriage house where Kristin was teaching us about sleighs to our studio space. And if you have been here before at the Long Island Museum, you may have been here learning about life on Long Island long ago. But today we're going to celebrate winter 2021 by making some yummy treats and also turning it into a bit of a crafts project for today. We are going to make, as you can probably see here, some snowmen made out of Rice Krispie treats. And I'm sure many of you have enjoyed a Rice Krispie treat before in the past, and this is going to be a fun way to express ourselves. And you can see that each of our little snowmen have a different personality. So I'm going to show you what you need to get started and walk you through the process. So let's go. Okay, so now I am ready to get started on the first part of our Rice Krispie snowmen. So what you're going to need first and foremost is an adult to make sure that you are doing everything safely, because you will need to cut a few things, and that can sometimes be a little unsafe. The first thing we're going to have to do is cut into 3 tablespoons of butter. So I'm using a stick of butter right here. That's a half a cup of butter if you are a baker and you know your measurements there. So Usually on the stick of butter, there will be some measurements here. It will tell you by tablespoon. So I'm cutting 3. I'm using a plastic knife. I would recommend using something maybe a little bit sharper. You should have that in your kitchen at home. And again, have an adult do it. So I'm going to take the stick of butter, and you want a microwavable proof bowl to be able to melt the butter. So what I'm going to do, and you can see that the color right here matches, which is fun. I'm going to put this bowl into the microwave like that. And then you're going to want to set it so that it microwaves and melts it. So I'm going to try and set it for about 30 to 40 seconds, but you want to keep an eye on it because sometimes the butter can go all over the microwave. So you really want to keep an eye on this. Okay, so I have melted my butter. You will notice when you take it out, it should be just completely melted. There shouldn't be any little bits of the butter. And then the fun part, we get to get our marshmallows. And before you put all of the marshmallows in here, you'll probably want a 10 to 12 ounce bag, by the way. So about the size I have is a 12 ounce bag. That's fine. So I would recommend taking a few of the marshmallows out and setting them aside. And look for ones that maybe aren't too smushed, because we are actually, if you can see this, we're going to make a hat out of it later on. So set a few aside, like I've done here. Then the rest are going to go in. Look at all those marshmallows. And what we are going to do is kind of shake it a little bit. This is considered tossing to coat, but if you toss it too much, all the marshmallows are going to go everywhere. So we just kind of want to do a little bit of this, like a little toss, or a little shake, just so that the butter can touch the marshmallows, because we're going to put this right back in the microwave. And this time we're going to put it on a little bit longer. And again, you're going to want to keep an eye on it, but we're melting all of the marshmallows into this for the next step. So I feel pretty good. I can see a little butter coating the marshmallows. Oh, and another word is that if you don't have these big marshmallows, no big deal. You can use the tiny ones. They will melt the same way. And we'll show you a few little hacks to make different hats out of different products that you might have in your cupboards. All right, so this is coated. I'm going to put it in the microwave I'm going to start it around a minute, but sometimes it might need to go for a little bit longer. So let me get started with that and I'll see how I do. Okay, so I ended up having to check on it at a minute, and I ended up putting it on for a little bit longer. But as long as they're a little bit mushy, mine have come together, they're jiggling a little bit. This is a fun part. You get to take, I would recommend a bigger spoon, a sturdy spoon, maybe even a big wooden mixing spoon, and then you're just gonna start mixing the marshmallow, which is it's so fun to do. So I'm mixing it together, and it'll come together. You'll still see a little bit of the butter, which is fine, because that's going to help with our next step, which will be incorporating the Rice Krispies. So I'm going to mix it a little bit more, and now I'm going to prepare for the Rice Krispie edition. So I'm leaving that there. You're going to want a measuring spoon, and you need a cup measurement because we're going to get 6 cups of Rice Krispie treats out of the box of cereal. So this can get a little bit messy. I would recommend either taking the bag out or putting it in a bigger bowl to scoop everything out of. So you'll get a cup measure, and what I've been doing is I put this aside and just mix it into the mixture just so it starts to get incorporated, but not too much, but you'll see it starts to mix in. Okay, so you probably got a little bit of an arm workout mixing all of these Rice Krispies into the marshmallow mixture. And by this point, you should have about 6 cups of Rice Krispies in your bowl, in the mixing bowl. And you can probably tell, because marshmallows are so sticky, that it's getting a little bit messy. So at this point, you have to let these sit for a few minutes anyways, because you can probably feel on the bottom of the bowl that it's still a little bit warm. So before we go on to our next step of starting to assemble the snowman, you have to let it sit. And at this point, I would also recommend going to wash your hands, which I'm going to do right now. All right, so hopefully you've let it cool down a little bit. Your bowl, if you feel it now, should be a little bit more room temperature. And this is going to be another part where you're going to get your hands a little messy. So what I recommend is either getting some butter and just kind of putting it on your hands, or my favorite method is taking some baking spray. And then what you're gonna do, and this looks a little weird, but I promise you this is the best way to do it. Just gonna spray a little bit on your hands and then mix it together like you do with like hand sanitizer or hand soap. So I'm gonna move that out of the way. Let me put this over here. And what I'm gonna do, I still have a little, my spoon in here. I'm just gonna do this, but then I'm going to start to collect some of the mixture in my hands. We're going to make a big bowl. So if you can look at the friends that we have here, we're gonna make 2 of them. And if you feel like making 3 parts of the body, go ahead. But what I recommend is you make the bigger one first. So for the base, we're putting that together like a ball, like this. And you really wanna make sure that it's tight together, because that's the best way for it to stay together so it won't fall apart. So I'm making mine a little bit bigger. And one thing that might be fun is to make a bunch. You probably have enough for about 6 snowmen here. So depending on how many people are in your household, make one for each member of your household. So this is the bottom, and then I'm going to do the same thing here, but maybe just a little bit smaller, as I said. And you want to make another ball just like you did here. And then don't put it on top just yet. I'll tell you how you're going to assemble it in a minute, but you're going to just want to let it sit for like a minute or 2 so that it kind of settles together. So you set it next to each other just to harden a tiny bit. Okay, so I went and washed my hands again. Again, I did tell you that this does get a little messy, but I let them also cool down for a little bit more, and I went and got marshmallow fluff. This is going to be our glue that keeps everything together on our snowman friends. And if you don't have marshmallow fluff, and if you have some more marshmallows, you can do what we did before and just melt them together with a little bit of butter. It'll basically do the same thing. So to assemble our snowmen, what I'm gonna do with the knife, I'm using another plastic knife just to make it easier. I'm gonna take a little bit of the marshmallow fluff and I'm going to spread it on the head part of our snowmen. And you don't want too much, but you also don't want too little. So I'm gonna do that, and then we're going to stick it right on the body. And what I recommend, like you do with any sort of glue, is you just hold it in place gently. You don't want to be pressing down too much on it, just so that it comes together and it'll be easier to work with. There you go. So my snowman, his body is all ready, and we're going to start decorating. Okay, so now I brought all of the things we have in our pantry so that I can play around and see what I might want to decorate my snowman with. But the first thing I would recommend doing before we start putting anything on the snowman is melting a little bit of chocolate, because as you can see here, we took one of the marshmallows that we set aside earlier and dipped it in chocolate to make a hat out of. But they're gonna need to sit for a little bit. So I'm using dipping chocolate that we got at the store, but you could also take some chocolate chips and melt a tiny bit of them in the microwave like we've done before. And what I usually like to do is put a few in and melt it for about 20 seconds, check on it, and if it's at a good consistency, then you're ready to go. So I'm gonna melt this first so we have it. So I melted the chocolate, and now what I'm going to do is dip the marshmallow in, and I'm using another plastic knife, and I'm just moving it around softly in the chocolate to coat it. You can use a toothpick, you can use a fork, but you just want to make sure that you're not cutting into the marshmallow because the hot chocolate will make it a bit soft. So what I've done is coated it, and we're going to want to let it sit because it needs to settle a little bit. So if it falls over, no big deal. It's going to be a little bit hard when we get to it in a little bit. So just let it sit. And if you want to just touch it up a tiny bit, I'm doing that now. And it'll be ready for us in a little bit. Okay, so while our top hat gets ready for us to put on later, let's start decorating and let's see what we might want to use. So one thing that I did was to try and put a little bit of a scarf around my snowman. It's a little bit hard, but we did have some fruit roll-ups. So I opened it and I laid it out, and you know what? It was cool because it had some different colors on it. So some of them look like they have really cool scarves on. And it's not gonna look perfect, but that's fine. These are just expressions of our art, and it's fun, and then we're gonna eat them because they're so yummy. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna kind of rip into the fruit roll-up. It's not gonna be perfect, of course. If an adult wants to make it a little bit more straight, they can absolutely use a knife to cut it so that it looks a little better. But I've had fun just ripping it with my hands and then rolling it up a little bit. And then starting to put it around the neck of our snowman. And as you can see, it didn't really reach the entire way. So I'm gonna get a little bit more. And I'm just gonna roll it again and put it around. And if you wanna add like a little bit of the scarf kind of going down, you can take a little bit of it and add it as well. You might need to get some of your fluff to really keep it down. But I kind of like this scarf on my snowman, so I'm gonna leave it like that. Didn't need fluff for it. So for the first part of the hat, before we get to the top hat, you might wanna use a cookie. I'm using these fudge stripe cookies. And actually, the ones that I got already are covered in chocolate. So if you have ones that aren't, you can also use some of the chocolate that you melted to dip it. So what I'm gonna do is put some marshmallow fluff on the bottom, like that. Not too much though, because as you can see, it will start to stick out a little bit. But what I'm gonna do is just gently hold it there for a little bit. And it'll start to stick, it'll start to stay in place. And then again, we will come back to that. So I've liked using jelly beans for the nose on our snowmen, but you could also use some of the fruit roll-up that you have left and make it into a nose. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to put a tiny bit of marshmallow fluff on my jelly bean. Might not work perfectly, but that's okay. And I'm just gonna stick it in the middle of his face and hold it there for a little bit. And so you can decide if you want some eyes on your little snowman or not. I did try to use some of these mini chocolate chips, and it looked so silly while I was trying to get the marshmallow fluff on, but I can show you what it looked like. If you want just tiny little eyes, I kind of dipped it like that, but look at all that marshmallow fluff. And then you just have to hold it carefully. Uh-oh, look, there goes my nose. There goes my nose. but you can see that's there, or get some mini M&Ms. Those are going to be a little bit easier to work with, even though you have to do this. And then you can even make 2 eyes. Why not, right? This is your expression of your snowman and what you want to eat afterwards, of course. So I've done something really silly. I've put the mini M&M and the mini chocolate chip as an eye. Why not, right? So then you can decorate it again any other way that you want. You might want to put some little buttons down with the mini M&Ms as buttons. And then if you don't have another marshmallow like we did, you could even use some Reese's cups. We did that here. I love this hat because we have a big Reese's cup and then a mini Reese's cup right here. Okay, so I have my hat now, and I have my decorated snowmen ready to go to assemble the last part of this. And you might have noticed that I have changed outfit because I decided I was going to put my snowman in the refrigerator along with the chocolate hat, with the marshmallow hat, just to let it harden a little bit. So I left it overnight, and I decided I could come back and put it together today. So I have the hat here, and I don't have to worry about getting chocolate all over my hands. It's not too mushy at the moment, which is going to be perfect for putting the hat on. So of course I take a little bit of marshmallow fluff. Do not put this in the fridge because then this will harden and it won't be a good glue for you. So we're going to put the marshmallow fluff right on the hat. And then we're going to do what we did with everything else and just gently hold it in place. And now he has his beautiful hat. So I was very happy with the way I decorated him. If you want to add a few last minute things, if you want to take your M&Ms and, put some buttons on here, go ahead. But I kind of like my minimalist snowman. But the last part we need is some pretzel sticks. And do we know what that's going to do for our snowman? It's going to give him arms. So I'm taking 2, making sure I don't drop them out of the bag. And depending how long you want the arms to be, and you want to make sure that they're these thin pretzel sticks, you're just going to stick them in his side. If you want him to have a long arm, there you go. But if you want to break it, give him a bit of a shorter arm, you could also do that. I mean, how silly, how fun does he look now? All right, so here is my snowman. I feel like it's a very good depiction of my personality, and I can't wait to see how your snowman depicts your personalities as well. You can definitely tag us in your photos of your snowmen on Instagram at LI Museum, on Facebook at LI Museum as well. So thank you for welcoming me into your homes today to do a little bit of baking with you and make some snowmen friends. I am going to take mine and maybe snack on it a little bit while I listen to Beth read us a wintertime story. We hope to see you soon at the museum, and enjoy the snow until we see you next time. Thank you.
Snow by Cynthia Rylant, illustrated by Lauren Stringer. The best snow is the snow that comes softly in the night, like a shy friend afraid to knock, so she thinks she'll just wait in the yard until you see her. This is the snow that brings you peace. And then there is the snow that begins to fall in fat, cheerful flakes while you are somewhere you'd rather not be. Maybe school, maybe work. And this snow tells you, as it falls, that it will send you home early. Don't worry. Home is where you need to be, and this snow will take you there. It will send you back over slippery white roads to the rooms you love so well, and it will say that it is all right to be happy. Some snow falls only lightly, just enough to make you notice the delicate limbs of trees, the light falling from the lamppost, a sparrow's small feet. And some snows fall so heavy they bury cars up to their noses and make evergreens bow and keep your kitties curled up a while. Children love snow better than anyone does, and they never complain as they pull on their red boots and mittens and make plans to catch wet flakes on their tongues and roll their small bodies to the bottom of a hill. The snow loves them back. It gives them angels and new friends. And the snow, while it is here, reminds us of this, that nothing lasts forever except memories. And while the snow is here this brief moment, let us take a walk and see how beautiful the world is. And then come back to our white, quiet homes and make something warm to drink, and maybe read or play a game or tell each other all that we've been thinking. The snow is falling while the flowers sleep, and the sun sleeps, and the soft green gardens are waiting. It is the snow's turn now. We'll watch it fall.